Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our panelists for being here. Some really important things that we're talking about today. If my colleagues and the panelists will indulge me for a quick history moment here. I know a few of us in this room, but certainly none of our staff may be old enough to remember, but the 1973 oil crisis was launched by Saudi Arabia and others, leading to an oil embargo against the United States and other countries who supported Israel in the Yom Kippur War. Some of us with gray hair, I won't mention any names, might actually remember that. It was a crisis. Gasoline prices skyrocketed. American families suffered, and lawmakers were scared across the spectrum. Congress responded with what we call the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975, signed into law by President Ford, a Republican, I might note. Now, I want to take a step back, though, and I think as federal lawmakers, especially on my side of the aisle, we should view this as a cautionary tale. It shows just what can happen when you legislate in a crisis and delegate authority after authority to the executive branch. Now, almost 50 years into the law's existence, with several changes having been made since then, you now can go to the DOE website to see where, and I quote, the U.S. Department of Energy has the authority to regulate the energy efficiency level of ceiling fans. Ceiling fans, I kid you not, from oil crisis to ceiling fans. Talk about mission creep. We started with addressing a major foreign policy and economic crisis and ended up with bureaucrats in Washington telling my constituents, all of your constituents, the maximum flow for their shower and how their ceiling fans should operate. And the list goes on and on. Whether it's gas stoves, thermostats, or water heaters, how did we ever end up where the federal government can tell you which kind of device and appliance to buy for your home? And now this administration is taking this a step further to use those standards as a way to shoehorn in their goals of societal electrification, regardless of true efficiency, the availability of proven technology, convenience, or cost. So, Mr. Lieberman, let me start with you. I know Congress established the authority for these appliance standards decades ago, long before I got here, but is it time to repeal or significantly curtail them, especially with so many examples of abuse of this authority to drive an agenda?
Incidentally, there's not just regulations for ceiling fans, but separate regulations for ceiling fan lights that are, as well. I think that it's high time to sunset the program. As I've said, consumers who want to buy ultra-efficient appliances are free to do so. Manufacturers make, for just about every appliance, models that go well beyond the efficiency standards for those for whom it makes sense. But for many, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
The problem with EPCA is it had some reasonable limitations. For example, that said you can't set a standard unless it saves a significant amount of energy.
Right.
But it didn't define significance, so that's been defined downward, so the agency says anything significant if they want to regulate it. So a lot of the reforms aren't really changing EPCA, but just strengthening some of the vague language in it.
Let me continue with you. Can you outline how these standards have now morphed into pursuing unrelated electrification and climate goals instead of purely conserving resources and saving consumers money? You kind of alluded to it in your answer, but you want to expand on that?
All of the proposed rules this year, clothes washers, dishwashers, refrigerators, ceiling fans, water heaters, stoves, they all include climate benefits as part of the overall benefits. That's just taking the eye off the ball in terms of what's best for consumers. You're now saying that consumers don't necessarily come forward.
I got one more final question for you. I represent a rural working class Appalachian district. Could these rules, as we just talked about, as they become more onerous, could they constitute a public health concern in your view? As costs go up and Americans can't afford the water heaters, the new stoves, rewiring their homes for these appliances, could this constitute a health crisis?
Just about all of these standards will raise the upfront cost of the appliance, and for some low-income homeowners, that could be prohibitive.
Yeah.
For those who aspire to own a home, almost every appliance in the house is going to be more
If
expensive.
nothing more,
Yeah.
a mental health crisis as that stress increases. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I think the gentleman